Hello everyone, Firecrest Gaming here, and welcome back to the series where I rank the games I have played in 2016. Last time we left off with my choices for the 5 worst games that I played throughout this year, and now we're picking up with the more average to above average stuff. So, let's take a quick trip down memory lane for a minute, shall we? Quantum Break was a game with such an awesome concept behind it, but as it said on the card, it just completely failed in the way that it did it. The whole idea is that it tried to make a combination of TV and games. It tried to combine the two. There's many advantages and disadvantages to that. Number one, let's say on the bad side, I'm going to assume that this doesn't come cheap. I mean, for the love of God, they got Aidan Gillen, someone who was on Game of Thrones. If that's not stretching your budget, I don't know what is. But regardless of that, the game does look incredible. Even though it came out in early 2016, some of the facial stuff does stand out extremely well because they obviously had to film them for the TV stuff, which I'll talk about in a minute. But I can talk about the game side of things while I have that on the screen. The time powers are quite interesting with the way that they work. However, the whole thing, it's another left trigger, shoot, so on and so forth. And it has a really weird way of having difficulty, quote unquote. The enemies will obviously be tougher, but you get less ammo for your guns. I don't know about you, but that seems like a really stupid way to implement difficulty. But I don't know, it's a mixture of two halves. The time powers, as I said, are interesting with every single one that you get, but they also get wasted by the fact that you have every single one of them at the end of the 3rd chapter, and they're all kind of wasted. And also, this final boss is terrible. It's not good at all. So what about the live action stuff? Is all I can say. The live action stuff is based on choices you'll make in the game, and that will affect, quote unquote, the action show. But the problem I have with it is, even though it does affect it a little bit, I really wish that it had more of an influence, or there was some more stuff to go on as the game progresses, because as said, the time powers are all spent after the first 3 chapters, so you haven't got much more to rely on apart from the rest of the world breaking due to the time breaking. This, trust me, if you're into time travel and you're a bit of a sci-fi person, well, a sciencey person, this is right up your alley. But if you're a genuine gamer and you're honestly just looking for something good, you can probably take a miss on this. And I don't know why I'm saying this, because this game was released in about spring of 2016, I think. Regardless, you can skip this one. Hi. This is another game I'm not 100% sure on how to critique here. You saw by the card, first horror game. And it's only a demo, obviously, so it's not fully representative of the full thing that we will eventually get. However, for now, this is what we got. And, I don't know, it was pretty good for what we got. I think I was only recording for about 40 or so minutes by the time I was done with this. So obviously it wasn't particularly long, being a demo. But I don't know, it was decently atmospheric. It had some scares, but I don't know. At least for the moment, it's been relatively, I don't know, just not that frightening. I mean, it was, but at the same time, it wasn't. It's a weird thing, and I just don't think it was that scary, to be honest. And I don't know, for a horror game, that seemed to be the whole point of it, to be scary, frightening. And this wasn't. There were some noises, there were some things that came out of nowhere, and that was it. I think there's more of a horrifying factor in this. There's more of a scary understory. So maybe if I knew a little bit more about that, or maybe if the full game comes out and I decide to go anywhere near it, then maybe I'll understand it in the future. But for now, decent, I guess. And I'm sorry to say, this is another game that I don't have any footage for, because when I came to record the footage just before I was about to do the voiceover, I realised I ran out of EA access and I couldn't play the game any longer. Thank you very much for that. So anyway, what can I say about the game in my short time playing it? It was extremely calming, for one thing, and the whole idea of it, I think, is more... it's supposed to be more of a story-based game once more, kind of like a Outlast 2 kind of thing, but in a completely different way, obviously. But it had a much more calmer, more emotional drive to it, and I could definitely see where it was coming from. And not to mention that the game does look beautiful. Hopefully, future me will put a screenshot on the screen for you right now of the gameplay, just to give you a quick demonstration of it. But as for that, it's kind of nice, but it's not quite my cup of tea. It's just a little bit boring for my taste. I like calm, but there's a limit. Now, you always remember your first, don't you? This was the very first game I actually played through in full on the channel, and it is fantastic to actually put it and sadly I have to actually put it in the more lower half of the list, which is a shame. However, I will explain why. The gameplay is ridiculously repetitive at times. This whole thing where realistically you just get a melee weapon and swing or just stab at someone over and over again for a while does get repetitive and very, very annoying. But, on the brighter side, it was a nice start to 2016 because the game came out relatively early in the year. And it was a nice change up in things from the normal Far Cry games, obviously, that we've been filled with guns up to this point. But the problem with it is that following on from Far Cry 3 and Far Cry 4, both had some very memorable things from them. Mainly the villains, Vaas in Far Cry 3 and Pagan Min in Far Cry 4, both which had their qualities and they were both actually extremely good. But in this game, you're obviously 10,000 years ago, you're in caveman territory, and, well, you can't really have a memorable character who just grunts and stuff as a caveman. So that factor has already gone, and also not to mention the fact that this game and Far Cry 4 share pretty much the exact same map, just pretty much repackaged and remodeled for the prehistoric era, which is a certain shame considering what promise there was. But there's certainly more better aspects to this. Certainly, I think we're into the region of games where there's a lot more. There's maybe as much good as there is bad, and soon I can't wait to get into the games that have more good than bad. Oh, this is one I might have been waiting to talk about for a while. F1 2016. Well, how can I talk about this one? This is going to be fun. How can I say? It's a vast, vast improvement on last year's game, obviously 2015, having minimal features and having so many things stripped out that it had on the last gen version F1 2014. It was so relaxing to see stuff like safety cars back, the introduction of the virtual safety car, making your own team, a new R&D system, and so many things returning, so many things being added, and the cars as well, they feel fantastic to drive this year. They honestly feel like this is one of the best handling models we've had in a very long time, possibly rivaling 2015. 2015 did have a good handling model. That was one of the few things it did have going for it. But regardless, there are still one or two issues. Despite also that as well, the AI do actually genuinely make mistakes. They will bump and crash into one another. They'll have some accidents. They'll break down a lot more. Very refreshing to see that as well. But with everything, it's not exactly perfect. And our getting used to the car under actual pressure didn't get helped by this. Thanks a lot, Hulkenberg. Can we have another look at that, please? You see, this is just what you want, when you're practicing, you got a brand new car, and you want to get to grips with it. Yeah, this is exactly what you want. You want a German Force India spinning you out. Nothing against Germans, just Hulkenberg. The game is far from perfect, and certainly I can say, maybe close to release, it had so many ways you could exploit the game, and so many ways that it's still easy, that I believe is still in, just like this one, which had in the career mode. You had the cars going up the inside in Baku, and they couldn't do it. They just hit the inside of the wall. I'm not sure if that still exists these days, but even then, how can you go through a game, test it, have an AI go up the inside, go on the offensive, and then they hit the wall and take themselves out of the race? And you can do that to every single car. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how you do the Retire All Cars challenge. You don't even have to hit a single one of them. They just have to hit the wall and then mildly hit you. That's it. It's just a shame, really, because 2015, while it wasn't brilliant and there was certainly a lack of content missing, 2016 should have expanded on that. And it did. But while expanded, it opened up a few cracks and opened up to a few holes, which definitely, more than certainly, showed the game's flaws. So I can't deny that F1 2016 is an extremely good game, almost. But it's still not quite what F1 fans want. And just when you think you're clear of the controversy, nope, it arises back to the surface. Now don't get me wrong, there are so many good points to this game. Number one, the graphics are nice and beautiful, as I've mentioned many a time and probably will mention a few more times in this video. It's just kind of a staple of modern games. They're just getting better and better, and it is astonishing. It genuinely is. But I'm kind of getting a bit tired of having to say it over and over again. So I'm just going to say graphics from now on. That's one thing. The other is that the single player is pretty good, actually. Now, you can say whatever you want, but I prefer single player experiences to multiplayer. Regardless of the game, if you get a good single player, I'm in. To a point, I don't really care what the game is. And for once, I can genuinely say that EA did a good job with a game, which is something I haven't actually been able to say in a while. But regardless, there are one or two small things that keep this back. Number one, it's just another shooter, to be honest. It's another first-person shooter that just happens to be set in a different time with maybe a few different mechanics and stuff, just being older. I don't know, simpler, I guess, than the modern stuff. Stuff like Call of Duty, Titanfall, which, surprisingly enough, this Titanfall 2 hasn't actually appeared on the list so far, which means it's higher than this. I really need to think this through more. Yeah. And the other, and say what you want, and I understand maybe the reason why it's like this, but something like the plane mechanic, the plane controls are so heavy. I understand it's the 1910s. I'm not asking them to be jet fighter agile and stuff, but they feel so heavy. And there's a point where I draw a line between realism and enjoyment. It's kind of the balance between a sim racing game and an arcade one. This is just on the wrong balance of the two. So I can give it credit and I can see why people like it, but let's move on before I'm crucified. Don't get me wrong, I really do like Watch Dogs 2. I do. But there are a few small things that definitely put this game a bit lower on the list for me. Number one, and compared to maybe something like Mafia 3, it just doesn't feel as, I don't know, it just doesn't feel as good. It feels off. Nothing feels connected that you do in the story. It feels like you're going around doing a bunch of things that don't have any connection to one another, which, I don't know, it's just a lack of feel from one to the other. And the other, call me old-fashioned, but all the hacking stuff gets really complicated and all that. And I don't know, I prefer, as I said, something like Mafia 3, where it's a lot more simpler. There's a lot less stuff going on as such, so it's just a million times easier. But regardless, I can see why so many people like this game. It's very fun to play. It's kind of a more of a less serious game as such, and it's very good. So I could definitely recommend this one, but it's just not my favourite open world game of this year. And now we pick up with this. I mentioned this earlier in the Battlefield 1 thing, where Titanfall 2 hadn't appeared on the list yet. Well, now it has. And to be honest, as by my account goes, I'm not sure how many I missed out on, but as far as I see, this is probably the best futuristic shooter I've played through all of them. I've played a couple of the modern Call of Duties and the last Titanfall, but this one is just lovely. Unlike Call of Duty, the difficulty is one thing that definitely does elevate this game for me. The difficulty is so fair and so fun that anyone realistically could pick up this game, start getting used to it, and they could beat this. But obviously it's still at this point on the list, so there are one or two smaller issues. Number one is kind of just personal. This probably isn't one of my favourite genres, to be honest. And the fact that it appeared this high on the list is definitely showing how good this game really is. But, yeah, it's just not my favourite. Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed going through today's games with me. Next time we'll be looking at games that are inside the top 10, which means these ones just didn't make the cut. Some of them, don't make no mistake, are fantastic. Stuff like Titanfall 2, even F1 2016 to a point, to be honest. Some of these games are fantastic. But they just didn't quite beat out the games that are to come. So I hope you can join me then, and I hope to see you in the next video. Goodbye.